Good afternoon. Well, afternoon here anyway in Southern Ontario. I know where our guest is right now. It's very early in the morning, and I can't be more delighted than to welcome Bree Stedman, our guest today. Bree is an incredible mentor and coach to women all around the world. She specializes, and I'm going to read this so I don't mess it up. Bree specializes in helping women to turn sabotaging, destructive, and negative self-talk into emotional control, confidence, and clarity. And she gives them the tools and the strategies to impact not only their lives, but as a ripple, the lives in the communities and the families around them. So I particularly like, Bree, I know you can hear me and we can't see you yet, but I like what you put in your book. I am the flashlight that cuts through the dark BS inner dialogue that keeps cycling and repeating and haunting your daily action. I like that. I like bringing that. Bree is an international best-selling author of this book, Own Your BS. And you can see I was flipping through it to get some to stop trying because I think we're just going to have more fun talking. But she's also got a new podcast called Own Your BS, so check that out as well. So I am going to welcome Bree Stedman. Welcome, Bree. So we can all see you now.
Hello. Good morning and good afternoon.
Depending on where you are, right?
Yeah.
Good day. Well, isn't
good.
that?
Yeah.
Is that an Australian anyway? To say good day?
G'day, it is.
Anyway, I have worked with people with MS for decades now. And what I've really come to understand, while, there's always that frantic search for finding the right supplement or the right medication or the silver bullet or whatever it is, that's going to cure MS. What I'm noticing more and more, and experiencing it myself, because I've had MS for 33 years myself, is often what gets in our way is exactly this internal dialogue, this lesser than feeling that keeps us in a place of demotivation and not believing in our awesomeness and how that awesomeness can be applied to healing on every level. And I think what we've seen in neuroscience in the last decade is that, this isn't freaky granola crunching, incense burning hippies talking about this stuff. This is hardcore neuroscience saying, change that headspace, change your body, change your life.
Yep.
It doesn't matter how advanced a condition is. It doesn't matter how long you've had something. It can be changed.
It can. And it doesn't ultimately matter the diagnosis either. With the right approach, any diagnosis can be improved upon when the headspace is improved to go along with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So and like I said, I put so many sticky notes on your book, I'm just going to forget it. But one of the things that you start talking about is how women lose sight of who they really are. And I talk to women about this all the time, right? Because in our adolescence, we're figuring life out. In our 30s, we're career-minded and having babies, and we're raising a family into our 40s. And then, we get into our 50s, and at some point we go, oh shit, who am I? Like what's going on? And then guess what? We layer a diagnosis over top of that. And then women especially become really lost in that because, of course, we are emotional creatures. We need to be able to connect to ourselves, but a greater understanding as well. So tell me
I think
more.
a lot of that comes to as well. If you look at the lifeline of a normal, and I use normal very loosely, but of a generalized woman, you go through puberty, you have kids, you spend 15, 20 years devoting yourself as a mum and as maybe a working woman as well. So you have these roles that define who you are, how you're supposed to think, how you're supposed to behave. You may not enjoy all of that period of time, but we grin and bear it. And that was the period of time when I lost the plot. And then kids grow up and all of a sudden you're left with all of this empty time and empty space, and the head starts to occupy the space that was otherwise preoccupied with other things. And like you say, then a diagnosis kicks into gear, and that just acts as the catalyst to really hone in on everything that's maybe not so fantastic in life. And I love what you were saying before we came to air, that slide you were talking about.
Yeah.
From Harvard, 40% of our time spent on the past, 50% spent on the future, 10% spent on the here and now. I see this with so many women. And if you look at, things like anxiety and fear, which I would assume would be fairly significant and common emotions, particularly when you've been diagnosed with a condition. Absolutely. Anxiety and fear about the future is driven predominantly because of the what if. Yep. What if I get worse? What if I don't have the strength to be able to look after myself? What if I can't care for my partner? What if? And that head talk is fueling that emotional state of fear, anxiety, overwhelm, and everything else that goes with the condition. So learning how to identify what BS it is that you're telling yourself, addressing it at the core of where it stems from, which for women is always the emotional connection, and then bringing back to here and now. Okay, yes, I have this condition of MS, but what can I do about it right here and now? What are the choices that are available to me in this next 5-minute period that are going to allow me to keep moving forward rather than thinking too far into the future?
Absolutely. And I think I want to add to that too, in the case of a setback, because we always think linearly, we think, and the dogma also says this is a neurodegenerative disease, which means there's one direction and it's straight downhill. But that's simply not true. It's not what I've experienced personally. It's not what I see clinically. But understanding that in every moment, it doesn't matter if it's a good moment or a bad moment, being present in that moment can change that moment. Right? Yeah.
And really, I mean, this has just sort of popped in, but if we think about it, you're born, you're a child, everything's downhill at some point anyway, because the end road ends the same for all of us, whether we've got a condition or not. It's just we get this label in our head that puts on the blinkers. It puts on this tunnel vision that stops us from seeing the different perspectives in the wider picture, and focuses on, well, this is what statistics say. And I normally don't sort of go down this road, but I feel like this is really important. Statistics-wise as well, particularly for women, up until 1993, which was only 25 years ago, any study done on brains did not have to be done on female brains. In fact, they were never done on female brains because science said it was too expensive, because we had too many hormones that were going to change the diagnosis of any of the studies that they did. So in 1993, the National Institute of Health mandated that female brains did in fact have to be studied. We weren't just smaller versions of male brains. We did have significant differences.
Go figure.
Even now, though, 25 years later, only 16% of studies that are done for female brains are done on female brains. 16%.
That's
I mean, 84% of what we know, 84% of what we are advised to do in regards to the way that we perceive, receive, and release emotional baggage, blocks, conditions, all of it, 84% of those studies and that testing is done on baby male castrated mice.
Perfect.
Because, we're so alike in male. You just take our hormones away and that's what we are.
Yeah, right? Just castrate those mice and good grief, you've got a woman.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, and this is what, in the last few years, we're starting to finally, science is actually recognizing, well, hang on a minute. Yes, women's brains are smaller than men's brains, but they are also made up differently. They have more, we have more white matter, they have more grey matter. We've got a larger limbic system, that larger emotional control center than male brains do. So because of these differences, the way that we are addressing female problems needs to be addressed in a different way. We have different, what's the saying? We're both computers. Females are the Mac computer, males are the PC computer. We do the exact same thing. We have the same kind of function, but we do it in a very different way. And so we need software that accommodates for the fact that we do have a gender-specific brain.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think that that spills over to any drugs, really. All of the drugs, whether it's an MS or an anxiety or whatever, they're all tested on men, men, and they always have been, right?
Yep. And the most common, you only have to speak to any female who's on long-term medication, and she's going to say the hardest thing about medication is getting the dose right. And the dose might be right for a week or two out of the month, but then the next part of the month it changes and it's not enough. They might need to play with their dose. All of that is hormone dependent.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I always say we are hormonal creatures, and in a way that we don't have to make excuses for that. We don't have to be embarrassed or ashamed about that, saying, oh, hormonal. Well, that's exactly what we are. And that's what makes us so special as women, as teachers, as mothers, as healers, that's where all.
And when we start to work with our hormone cycle, we start to find that you can be empowered through working with your cycle. That's the purpose of being a female, is that we are cyclic. We are not these lineal creatures that men are. Yeah. And, there's always the exception to the rule. There's always that 1 in 10 male that's going to be more in touch with the feminine side, but his brain is still driven by testosterone. Our brain is still driven by estrogen and progesterone, and our levels fluctuate every single day from the time, and I've been doing some more reading on this. So from birth, little baby girls between the age of 6 months and 24 months have a surge of hormones. Right. They then go into this hormone slump up until they hit puberty, which now is the average age of 8 to 9. Yeah. From 8 to 9, right through until a woman dies, she has a fluctuating hormone cycle, regardless of whether or not you get a period. So, and I know with MS, diagnosis tends to sort of happen more towards the end part of a woman's life. And so a lot of women might go, well, I don't even have a period. Maybe I've been through menopause, or maybe I'm going through menopause. You still have hormones, babe.
Well, no kidding. And what's really interesting about the whole hormonal picture is that the hypothalamus, which is sort of control center for all hormone release, is an area in the brain that is very vulnerable to MS lesions. So we get this part of the brain, which is in flux anyway. Then we get a diagnosis and we have these lesions. So that hormonal flux becomes even more significant. But let's tie all this hormonal talk back into that negative self-talk, and that, because the brain and the body are so connected, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it essentially, this is what I love about bringing this stuff into women's awareness, because there will be, and I can see we've got a whole heap of people saying, hey. So hi, we've got Lorraine and Roxanne, and
yeah,
it's nice to see everyone on.
Hi, Lorraine, Roxanne, hello.
So the reason that I bring this into awareness for women is because if you start to track what your hormone cycle looks like to you, and you don't need to go into big depth, you might just be mindful of what your thought patterns are like over the space of a month. You're likely to find that there will be, 10 days to 14 days where your head talk feels more negative, more down, more derogatory, maybe even more hopeless than it does the other part of the month. And that's because at that point in time, your estrogen and progesterone levels might be at the lowest. So negative thinking becomes a natural sort of form of being. But it doesn't mean that the negative thinking needs to control you. You can find, and I don't want to say find peace with negative thinking, but it's essentially what you're doing, because I use the term emotional control, and you mentioned it when you did my introduction. To me, emotional control is being able to recognize that life is going to happen. There are going to be good days, there are going to be bad days. With a diagnosis such as MS, you're going to have some really shitty, hard days that just feel really difficult. And then you're going to have some days where it's maybe not so noticeable and you do things really well. Emotional control is about being able to recognize when life is throwing you a curveball and you are buying into that situation, recognizing what it is that you are telling yourself, and then developing the confidence to get out of it with tools and strategies that are specific for releasing the charge. Right. Because the charge for all negative head talk is not the story, but the emotion.
Right.
So every single negative thing that a woman says to herself is going to be connected to an emotion. And this brings back that mind-body connection. Women connect negative emotion 25% more often to a story than a man will.
Yeah.
So, and what happens within the brain is when you go down that line of thinking of, let's stick with the MS theme and assume that maybe one common story might be, it's hopeless, I don't know what to do, it feels like it's never going to get any better.
Right.
Is that that would be a somewhat common maybe story?
I think that's common in people even without a diagnosis of MS.
So you're thinking things like, it's not going to get any better, this is so hard, everything that I do, it's not making a difference. I've tried that positive thinking thing and it didn't work. When you recognize, and firstly, you have to stop and actually recognize what it is that you're saying to yourself. Because when we're in that space of thinking, it's like a little tornado zipping around in our head. These thoughts are just going a million miles an hour and we can't actually grab hold of any of them. That's what it feels like because you're caught up in the story.
Yep.
So what I encourage my clients to do is to stop the thinking and actually start listing down on a piece of paper, what is it that you are saying to yourself? Because the physical act of writing down your thoughts, firstly, it brings into the scenario the logic brain, because the logical brain is the brain that forms the words that creates the writing on the piece of paper. So write down, I'm feeling hopeless today. I don't think this is going to get any easier. Everything that I do doesn't work. Whatever it is, write it down on a piece of paper. As you start to write it down, be mindful of what does all of that make me feel? Yes. What is the emotion that is being stirred as a result of these thoughts? And you'll find that even if you list 30 or 40 thoughts, the majority of them are going to be linked back to the exact same emotion.
Right.
And when you know what that emotion is, then we can do something with it and we can release the charge of the head talk, because the head talk is really only there to validate the feeling that is being charged. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a question here from Lorraine. She says, does this happen until you die?
In terms of the hormone fluctuation?
Yeah.
It does. It's not as severe, Lorraine. Good news is it's not as severe. When you're in your fertile years, your cycle is going to be much more pronounced. You're going to have those higher highs and the lower lows of estrogen and progesterone. As we go through perimenopause and menopause, it's a little all over the place. Anyone who's experienced that knows that the cycle is really hard to predict, but it's there. It's just
and the female body cycles for 5 or 6 years after a physical period has stopped. So those emotions will continue to cycle even though that period's not there, right?
Yes. And the hormones will continue to be produced, but rather than them looking like this, which is this up, down, they sort of go more like this gentle wave. Exactly. Like the waves out the back of an ocean that are just rolling around. It's more like that sort of high and low ebb.
And then, of course, from my perspective as a naturopathic doctor, there's all kinds of other stuff that factors into that too. What's the status of your liver? What's the status of your gut? How is that affecting your brain too? So, there's a number of things for people to look at as well. But Roxanne had said here, I'm extremely emotional. So Roxanne, to you, that would be a great exercise for all of us. It would be a great exercise that when we're feeling, in that emotional state.
And can I add to it? I've actually got a strategy. So I love this. I teach this to everybody because I think this is what takes negative, let's just stop thinking negatively and start thinking positively to a whole new level, because that's the general advice. If you know that you struggle from negative thinking, chances are you've read a self-help book or you've listened to some expert who's talked about the power of positive thinking. And I know this is why I wrote Own Your BS in the way that I did, because I got so fed up of reading these self-help books, of better understanding why I was feeling emotional all of the time, but getting to the end of the book and going, okay, great, I've got more information, but what do I do with it?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, information is just words put together unless you have something that can back it up.
Indeed. And I think we can all agree that information gathering age is kind of come to an end because everybody's overwhelmed and doesn't know what the heck to do with all the information they've gathered. So,
Yes. So the next step is about putting power back into your hands, putting control. Because while ever you're in that thought of, I'm emotional all the time, there's negative thinking, I don't know what to do, you're stuck in that space because the emotion is driving that sense of helplessness. So you write down all of your negative thoughts that you're aware of as they come up, and it's going to change from day to day. So you might just do this at the beginning of every day, you might do it every night, or you might just choose to do it when you're recognizing that things are feeling out of control. You know, if you've had something trigger you in the middle of the day that activates this negative thinking, start listing out exactly what it is that you're saying to yourself, and then identify the emotional charge. Now, sometimes it can feel like there's more than one emotion going on. We just want to work with the strongest emotion to start with. Okay. Now, Teri, can you play with me? Are you happy to play with me as we do this?
I'm happy to play with you, Bree.
Yay. Okay. So, Teri, think about a common negative thought that you have maybe previously bought into, or maybe you still buy into it from time to time now, that causes you to feel an emotion, and tell me what that emotion is.
Okay. I would say that emotion that's at the end of that thought pattern is overwhelm. Like,
I
oh my
knew you were going to
God,
say that.
how the hell am I going to get this all done this week? I need another, I need another day in my week. If only I had another day in my week.
Yeah, overwhelm. And for everyone listening right now, if overwhelm is something that you also relate to, I would love to see like a thumbs up, or you can write a yep in the comments box, because you can play along with us at home while we do this. Mm-hmm. I'm going to bust you all through overwhelm right now as we're online. Okay, so I'm just going to keep an eye on the comment section. If you're not comfortable to comment or put your hand up and say, yep, I'm feeling overwhelmed, that's fine. Just recognize it to yourself, because I know that there are a number of women that will be feeling this emotion. It's a female emotion. Okay, so you're feeling overwhelmed, Teri. Now, yes. If you were to close your eyes, Rosalia, thank you, darling. Okay, so play along with me. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to feel into your body and tell me, where does overwhelm live?
Wow.
Where is it?
Sorry, throwing things around here. So, first of all, I have to say very, very clearly that when we stop and connect with our bodies for a while, they tell us all kinds of stuff, right? So first, the overwhelm, it started in my chest, and then it started to move around my body, and then it sunk right into my legs. And the interesting thing about that is my legs are my biggest problem with MS.
Okay, good. All right. So the overwhelm for you, Teri, is sort of stemming from the legs moving throughout the rest of the body, but stems and starts at the legs. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. And Rosalia has said the heart and the gut. Excellent. Okay. Now, when you close your eyes again for me, when you see and feel the overwhelm, if overwhelm was a color, what color would overwhelm be?
It's black and orange.
Black and orange. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how strongly do you feel overwhelmed? 10 being like very, very intense.
This is a lot of self-disclosure. I would have to say it's about an 8.
It's about an 8. Okay. And Roxanne, it lives in the gut and the legs also. So for Roxanne and Rosalia and everyone else who is playing at home, what colour is the overwhelm? And if you could just share on a scale of 1 to 10 how strongly you feel overwhelming your body when you tune into it.
So Roxanne and Rosalia, you can tell us that. What color is the overwhelm? And on a scale of black, and it's 9. There you go, Roxanne. I hear you.
Good.
Okay.
Now, Lindsay's saying the test. Thanks, Lindsay.
Chest. Yeah. On a scale of 0 to 10, Lindsay? And what color is it? Red, and a 7 for Rosalia. Excellent. Oh, hi, Lisa. Red and a 9. Interesting, that red color, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Awesome. So we've got a lot of overwhelm happening right now. And the important part of what we're doing right now is this is owning it. This is not just pushing it to the side and going, oh, I feel overwhelmed, so what am I going to do? This is recognizing that it is something that you genuinely feel and that you are also owning the fact that it's there. So the next question I have for you all is this something you want to release? Do you want to let go of feeling overwhelmed on the scale of 7, 8, 9, wherever it lives in your body? Is it something you want to release?
It is definitely for me. I don't know about these gals. The color isn't coming to me, but it feels like a 7, Lindsay says.
That's great. Thanks, Lindsay.
Now, the question now, lady.
If it was a color, what color would it be? If you had to pick one color, what color would you instinctively go towards?
Did you hear that, Lindsay? So I am definitely ready to release it, but it's so interesting. All of this talk, my nose has sort of gotten back to normal, but it brought me, this whole freaking conversation is got like my tears are right here.
I can right see.
If I lose it, Bree.
I promise if you lose it, I'm going to bring you back together. It's all good.
Okay.
Okay. So you know where it lives. You know what color it is. And Lindsay, just play along. Pick a color. Okay. For everyone else, you've got a color that's fantastic and you're all ready to let it go. So what I want you all to do now is I invite you to close your eyes again. And I want you now to imagine a deflated, thank you, Lindsay, maybe a grey or black. So you're going to play with grey and black, Lindsay. So I want you all now to imagine a deflated balloon in the colour that represents overwhelm. And Teri, I'm just going to rely on your responses to this. So for everyone else, just play along.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
You can see the deflated balloon.
I sure can.
I want you now we're going to take 3 really big deep breaths together. And regardless, Rosalia, I'm going to come back to you, darling. So with every deep breath in, we're going to bring overwhelm up out of where it lives in the body. So for you, Teri, we're going to bring it up out of the legs. We're going to bring it into the breath. And then we're going to exhale and blow it out into the balloon. And we're going to watch the balloon get big. Now take another big deep breath and bring all of the overwhelm up out of the legs. Feel it come up into the breath and exhale and blow it out into the balloon. Now, one more big breath. Make sure every last little bit of that overwhelm is up, out of the body, into the breath, and exhale and blow it out into the balloon. Okay, now is all the overwhelm out of the body?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, how big is the balloon? Show me how big your balloon is.
It's huge. I can't put my arms around it. It's bigger than that. So it's bigger than this.
Okay, great. I want you to pop the balloon. Keep your eyes closed.
Okay. Okay, done. Popped.
All right. If we've moved the overwhelm out of the legs into a balloon and popped the balloon, where did overwhelm go?
I don't care because my whole body feels lighter.
And on a scale of 1 to 10 now, how strongly do you feel overwhelmed?
About a 4.
About a 4.
Yeah.
Manageable?
What's that?
Is that manageable?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. So, Roxanne saying now anxiety has gone through the roof. Fantastic. Roxanne, what colour is anxiety? Where does it live in the body? This is the great thing about this strategy. And you'll notice while Teri and I have been talking, and for everyone who's been playing along in the comment section, I've not once asked what's actually causing you to feel what you feel.
Right.
I've not gone into the story, the head talk, the things that you're telling yourself. We're just focusing on the one thing that's actually driving every negative thought you have, and that is your emotion. So, Roxanne, you can do the exact same thing right now. Lorraine, who said that she normally feels angry more so than overwhelmed, do the exact same process. Where in the body do you feel anxiety? Where in the body do you feel angry? If there's anything else that comes up for you through this process, where in the body does it live? Identify it. What colour is it? Roxanne's saying red. Fantastic. So she's already doing this now. On a scale of 1 to 10, how strong is it? And then take your big 3 deep breaths and blow all of that into the balloon. Because what we're doing through that strategy is we're creating, the mind sees through images. And whatever the mind sees, the body believes. Yep. So when we paint an image in the mind of a balloon that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, full of emotion that then pops, the logical part of the brain goes, well, we've moved all that emotion out of the body, therefore it doesn't exist. And the body goes,
right.
And it feels so much better.
Well, you know what's really interesting too, Bree, is that that very exercise is very qigong-esque. It's almost like a qigong meditation, you know, where you breathe it in and get rid of it by the breath. So I can totally relate to that, you know. Ooh. Now you can do this. I'm just thinking now a little bit about all Norman Doidge's work with neuroplasticity, and you could use the same thing for a troubling symptom. Couldn't you use the same process for pain, for, you know, nausea, for other things like that too?
Yep, right? Absolutely.
Because
so it's just giving you a strategy to be able to take control. That's why I say emotional control, because in the moment when you're feeling anxiety through the roof, ultimately you have a choice. You can continue to think, I'm feeling anxiety through the roof, and this is all of the reasons why I'm feeling anxiety, which is what up until now you've probably done unconsciously. You grab hold of an emotion, and then that emotion drives all of this negative thought, and you feel like you don't have a way out. You feel like there is no choice. Right. And this is the most confronting part, but also the most powerful part of taking ownership of your life, is that recognition that you always have a choice. It's not always easy, and it's not always comfortable. In fact, sometimes it can be bloody confronting to hear your truth and really feel into it. However, when you recognize that the choice exists, you then take back control of the driver's seat. And let me tell you a little story about, just for everyone who doesn't know anything about me. My truth, when I started on all of this journey, it was 2012. I was a professional woman running quite a successful multinational business. I'd been, you know, recognized in the top 15 of the company a number of times. So, you know, had quite a high kind of persona within the company that I worked with. Simultaneous to that, I had my 2 kids and loved my kids. But, and I know that I'm not alone when I say this, I used to constantly feel like I was just plastering on a smile, and yep, it's all good, when all I really wanted to do was scream. Like, I felt so out of control. I didn't know what to do. I felt both of my children have learning and behavioural difficulties, so they're challenging kids. In 2012, my son, who was then not even 4, he was about 4, he hadn't been quite diagnosed with ADHD yet, but we knew that he was not normal. Now, at that point in time, I put myself into work because that was the one area of my life I could control. When I was mum, I couldn't control their behaviour. I couldn't control the way that they reacted to me. And so things at home were messy, and they were really yuck. I started doing parenting courses. They all blamed my son for the reason why our house was such a mess, because the 4-year-old had control of the home. Not once did anyone ever say to me, Bree, how are you responding to your kids' behaviour? Not once did any of these parenting experts ask me what I was contributing to the situation. And this is when I started to learn about the female brain and about our head talk and the power of head talk, because I'd spent 7 years prior trying to master positive thinking and law of attraction and affirmations and abundance. None of it worked. And so I started to get real with myself. I started thinking, okay, well, what is actually driving my behaviour at home? So that exercise of listing down the thoughts that were running through my head, I started to list down the thoughts. Yeah. And this one particular episode happened where my kids were playing. I went up behind my son to give him a bit of a, pat on the back, because he was playing really nicely with his sister, and he flinched away from me. Now, the reason he flinched away from me was because up until that point, I'd been physically aggressive with him on more than one occasion. So I was a violent, abusive mum, out of control, because my head talk and my emotions dominated my every action. And as I started to become aware of what it was that was driving my behaviour, the one truth that kept cycling, that I refused to admit for so long was, I hate being a mum. Hate being a mum. And the first time I recognized that, the first time I really recognized that, it was like what happened to you, Teri. You know, I felt the emotion bubble up. It was like a punch in the gut. You know, what mother could possibly hate that role that she's been gifted with? So then comes the guilt and the shame and the resentment and everything else. So that one truth bomb of that inner dialogue that cycled over everything, that drove so much emotion, the moment that I recognized that was my truth was the moment everything changed.
Right. Because
everything changed.
You can face it, you can acknowledge it. And
well, I could look at that and go, well, my kids are 4 and 2, so I can either spend the next 20 years hating this role that I'm stuck in, or I can actually sort my shit out, because it's my shit, no one else's.
Yeah. And it's funny because I talk to people all the time about acceptance, you know, and I have all kinds of reactions to that. And I love it, you know, because some of them are like, oh, you know, like I'm asking them to roll over and play dead and surrender to MS. And in fact, it's quite the opposite, because once we acknowledge this is it, then you've diffused the monster, and you can start doing something about it, right? You can start actually living, right? And you use the words get real, like get real about it. So you can sit around and wallow at home and go, oh, this sucks, which is a word I freaking hate when it comes to, you know, or you can acknowledge and get real about it and acknowledge your truth that you're hurting, and it's not, you know, you might not be happy about it. It might be painful or whatever. And then you can start to change. Yeah. Right? That can start the cascade of change then, right?
And it all starts, and that was really where, you know, Only BS came from. It's not about clearing it. It's not about removing it. It's not about pushing it to the side. It's owning it. It's owning it as a part of who you are, with the strategies and skills that give you the way through it. Yeah. You don't need to own it and hang on to it forever. You just own it, recognize that it's there, and then do something with it to cause yourself a bit of relief.
Yeah. And my experience, like you, I've got, you know, bookshelves full of self-help books dating back 25 years, you know, but, and you're right, it never goes away. People say, oh, well, you know, how long do I have to meditate before I'm done? It's like, you know, but you intuitively and instinctively and very naturally start dealing with things differently, right? So that it never becomes this big thought process and a big journaling process, although the journaling is a perfect exercise for on a daily basis. But in the moment, you're making different and better and better and better decisions. And
the really cool thing as well, sorry for interrupting you, I was just going to say, the really cool thing though about that exercise that we just did with the balloon is, if you think back on some of those thoughts that were causing you to feel overwhelmed, are they even that important now?
Yeah. Right.
So you are doing something with it, but you're doing it through something that is female driven.
Yeah.
You know, traditionally we would focus on the story, and we would focus on what it is that you're saying to yourself, and let's reprogram that thought.
Right.
No, let's reprogram the emotion. Let's address the emotional charge, because then the story, it doesn't matter. You know, the fact that I used to say I hate being a mum, that wasn't the problem. The problem was I was so angry, and I was so guilty, and I was so hurt all of the time. That was what caused me to say I hate being a mum. Once I addressed those emotions, it just became a sentence with no charge.
Exactly.
And then it was easier to replace.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing, is taking the charge out of it. I often talk about unhooking yourself, you know, like not getting hooked by that stuff anymore, you know. So, yeah. Now, what was I going to say before? I can't remember. It was a brilliant point, I'm sure, but so I wanted to bring us back to some of those, some of the things that you were just talking about, the shame and the guilt and the, you know, and because that's all sort of societal expectations on us, right? Those are thoughts, patterns, and behaviors that we kind of succumb to, for lack of a better word, or, that are sort of handed down to us from whomever, our teachers, our parents, our, the significant people in our lives. And they're not really ours. We don't really own them. So these, that's right. They're just passed on to us. So, and that's what leads us to feeling lesser than. That feeds into the plague of perfectionism. I can't tell you how many times I hear, "Oh, I'm quite a perfectionist."
What does it even mean?
What's that?
I said, what does it even mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Perfectionism it's a set of standards that you have created for yourself that has no fluidity. It's this rigid, this is who I am.
That's exactly the word that came to my mind when you said when I said perfection. It was rigid, and I mean, there's something to blow in a balloon, isn't it? Right.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about that balloon technique. And look, I just want to be really clear with this as well. That balloon technique is not the solution to your emotions. That balloon technique is not going to permanently dissolve the emotional charge that you have, because the emotion is embedded so much deeper into you than what you're even aware. But what it will do for you is, in that moment, give you a new perspective.
Right. Yeah.
There are things out there that you can do that do relieve the emotions at a deeper, more long-lasting manner. And when I work with my clients one-on-one, I work with them at that deeper level so that they do have long-term release from their emotions. But the reason that I teach that strategy and the other little strategies that I teach is so that in the moment you have control to bring back a sense of fluidity. If you're feeling rigid through this whole things have to be perfect, or I love what you said about the expectations. We perceive that society has an expectation of who we are and how we behave. And that was ultimately why I ended up losing the plot, because I was trapped under this perception that I was expected to behave a certain way because of the company that I worked with and because of my role as a mum.
Right.
It was expected of me that I had my shit together all of the time. It was expected that I would smile instead of yell, or like all these they're just such stupid expectations that we don't even, the reality is as well, if we actually started talking to these people that we think have the expectations on us, they don't have an expectation of us. It's an expectation we have on ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And at the same time, we feel like we're the only people that are quote unquote suffering,
Yes.
and that everybody else is perfect and it's my world that's falling apart,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I hear you. Well, that was a wonderful exercise, and I think that's something that we can all use going forward.
And I really would encourage everyone, every single time, and I know that there's been a number of comments that have come up and said, but I felt sad or I felt angry or whatever it might be. Every single time you feel something negative or you think something negative, you've got a choice now. You can choose to stay in that space or you can choose to blow a balloon. Now, it might seem this silly little activity, but if it works to give you a little bit of relief, isn't it worth giving it a go? And I would encourage you to teach it to everyone around you. When a girlfriend comes to you upset, because we as women, we love to natter, we love to chat. And quite often when we start chatting with our girlfriends, we find ourselves naturally falling into this whinging, whining, moment where we just complain. So when you identify that you're in that moment, or a girlfriend's in that moment, and you can see them buying into the emotion of their story, stop the conversation and say, hun, I want to help you here, but talking about the problem is not helping right now. So let's stop, let's blow a balloon, let's neutralize it, and then we'll come back to the conversation from a solution focus. And you can do this with your MS as well.
Yep.
Venting is important. You need to be able to vent about your frustrations. Vent for, give yourself 2 or 3 minutes when you see your girlfriend to vent, but then pull it up and stop, diffuse the emotion, and then get back to solution. Okay, I'm having a bad day, but what is it that I can do today?
Right.
My MS is mucking up on me. I'm in a lot of pain. So what do I need to do today to care for me? What are the things that I have to get done? What are the things that I need to get done? And let's just focus on those little steps rather than, conquering the world today, because today my MS is not letting me conquer the world, but it will let me do X, Y, Z.
Exactly. And having And I think all of this comes down to self-compassion, right? And self-compassion is about saying, okay, this is a shitty day. Therefore, my favorite place is going to be on the sofa in front of a soap opera, and make that okay. Even though you
Yep.
have a to-do list that's 50 items long, because we all have one of those, right?
And I'm releasing a podcast tomorrow. Episode 4 is actually entitled I Should, because women, you know, we are the worst victim to this. You know, we rush around all day trying to be everything for everybody else. We sit down on the lounge at the end of the day to have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and all of a sudden the I should starts. Right. I should get up and start dinner. I should get up and clean the kitchen. I should play with the kids. I should do whatever it is. I should binds you to obligation. So when you recognize the whole I should, which is ultimately putting someone above your own needs, replace the I should with I choose.
I choose.
I choose to sit down on the lounge today. And I had to do this yesterday. I had my period started yesterday, and I was just flat as a tack. And I went, you know what? No, I choose to do this one podcast because I'm in that moment. But I also then choose to disconnect and just be whatever I need to be for where I am right now, because that's what I need. And the moment that you choose to do something over doing something because you feel obligated, again, you're in the driver's seat.
Right.
So really good podcast episode tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, and we'll all listen to it for sure.
Yeah.
Now, listen, another thing I wanted to say about the should, Mike and I have a rule in our house, like we catch ourselves using the S word, as we call it, because it's also not living in the present moment, right? It's fretting about something that hasn't happened yet. So going back to that pie chart that I got from Harvard, right? We waste 50% of our time worrying about stuff that hasn't happened yet. So there's all kinds of ways to look at that. I see Daniel saying there's so much here for me, even as a male. That moment of negativity tries to take over, and once it begins, it's a downward spiral into hell. I try to always see the cup half full of water, and the other half is air. Need both, like that.
Yeah, I like that.
Absolutely. Okay. And hi, Patrice. Okay.
Changing the way we think, yes.
What's that?
I said, Patrice has just said, changing the way that we think. It's a constant awareness. And it is. The last little thing that I do want to just tap on.
Yeah.
And thanks, Patrice, for bringing this up. It is, there's a fine line between constant awareness, which can also, you can fall into the trap of judging yourself. And this is, again, speaking from experience. When I first recognized that whole I hate being a mum thing, I fell into the trap of constantly monitoring every thought that I had and constantly, listing everything down.
Right.
That also takes you away from the here and now. Right. So you want to do this really delicate dance of recognizing when they're big, the big issues, the big emotions that keep sidetracking you from life. You want to address those first, because otherwise what happens is you end up so burned out. And this is why I don't like mindfulness. And I know that's a big comment to make, but mindfulness is being constantly switched on to monitoring what's going on inside your head and constantly choosing to stay in that mindful state. Right. That's not living either.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's a really delicate balance of being able to recognize that, yes, we need to be aware. Yeah. But if the thought is just a passing thought of, God, the kids are driving me nuts today, or God, my elbows are aching, or my legs are a little bit sore today, it feels like a bit of a tough day, but you can move through it, then let that go. Yeah. If it's something that you keep coming back to, if it cycles over 3 or 4 times, in the space of an hour or two, right, then, address it then.
Yeah. Then it's becoming just a bad pattern. Then it's becoming a story that has a life of its own, right? Yeah.
Well, and it's an indication that the emotion underneath it does need addressing.
Yeah, exactly.
The body is trying to speak to you through messages via pain in the body or through a thought that you're having. That's the only way the body knows how to communicate. Yeah, so if you've got the same thoughts rotating, then your body is trying to say, hey, stop. You're feeling this emotion needs to be released, or this pain needs to be released. Yeah. So it's again, fine line of being able to, it's just paying attention, listening, owning it and listening.
Being present, right? Back to that slide, the 10% of our time that we spend being present, making that bigger, stealing from the time that we fret about the past and worry about, the future. So,
the future. Yep.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Well, Bree, it's been such a pleasure to have you. And I think we could probably just make a pot of tea and talk all afternoon. But I wanted to, where is it? I out of your book, there's a quote from Leonardo DiCaprio that I want to hear. And I the one I'm talking about.
I know the one. It's my favorite.
And so the quote is, every next level of your life will demand a different you. So understanding that this is an ever-changing thing. So what you're talking about, these exercises and these strategies you've given us today are really resiliency strategies, right? So wherever we are, and that's an important thing for people to realize in this world, wherever we are, we have to have these resiliency strategies, and because life goes on. I mean, I'm considered someone who has advanced MS, and yet I work every day. I have a full and complete life, and that I feel is mostly because of resiliency strategies like the ones that you've shared with us today. So thank you so much. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of use out of those strategies.
You're very, very welcome.
Okay, so this is Bree, and what do you?
We're going to share some information about Bree.
Oh, sorry, my technical man. Oh, sorry.
You.
Oh, I thought.
There you go.
Sorry, I didn't realize our names weren't on
the agenda.
And so here, what I'm going to do here is give you Bree's. Is that on there?
Yep, it's just come up.
Has your website just come up?
It's come up on my screen.
Oh, has it? Good.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's Bree's website, and remember, she has a podcast and a lovely book. But I'm looking for.
Look at that.
I listened to the first podcast. It was awesome. I love listening to your talk, Bree. So I can't wait to listen to the other one. And thanks again so much. And thank you all for joining, and thank you all for participating and all your wonderful comments. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you. And to anyone who has maybe struggled with the balloon strategy, or if you want more, the book is up there. You can purchase it. Free shipping. I'll ship anywhere in the world. And if you do want to connect with me via Facebook, then feel free to do that as well. Yeah. Every struggle that you're having, and I've been watching your comments come through. So firstly, for everyone who has commented, big congratulations and well done to you guys, because, it's quite a confronting thing to put how you're feeling up on a public platform. So kudos to you guys, because you've owned your shit right then and there. And if other stuff is surfacing, just recognize that that's you stepping into a new space of awareness. Every time a new emotion surfaces and you choose to do something with it, you're really owning your life. You're taking back a sense of emotional control. So keep using it. And if you do want to reach out and connect with me, learn more about the book or the program or the podcast, then please reach out.
Definitely. Good stuff. Okay. We'll see you later, Bree.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. I'm so happy you joined us. Thank you.
See you guys.
Bye-bye. So is Bree there? Can I still talk to Bree?
No.